it inspired me to really talk about horror soundtracks. There's certain things that work so well that they stand the test of time, where everybody knows that score. If I play that, those particular keys on the piano, you're going to know what that score is.
I love that when you walk away from a movie, it stays with you. It haunts you afterwards. And good scores can do that.
Hello there, everybody. Welcome to the Dungeon of Deadly Delights. I am your host, Rob DiLauro. Thank you so much for joining me again tonight. This is an awesome night because I had a little bit of changing of the guard when it comes to the crew here. And I got to say, I'm super excited to work with both of them. So we've got a journey ahead of us, as far as the crew together. Really hope you enjoy what we bring you. This is our first, inaugural episode, as the new team, and I think I can't ask for a better crew than this. So I'm just gonna have everybody introduce themselves real fast before we talk about our topic for tonight. So Brittany, first of all, welcome. I'm gonna love working with you.
I'm excited. It'll be fun.
So tell everybody about yourself real quick, Britt.
I'm Brittany, obviously. 27, actress from Ohio. Probably most known for Don't Fuck in the Woods.
Mm-hmm.
Also do some writing and directing. So yeah, what else should I say about myself?
Well, here's the thing about Brittany. Brittany was part of a group called Concept Media. They come out with a movie called Don't Fuck in the Woods, and this movie just breaks through the mainstream as far as low budget indies concerned. And I was obviously a fan of Brittany in the beginning, but Brittany has a charm and an energy that I was really looking for as far as the person that I wanted to really get to know and connect with as far as the show. And I can't ask for a better. I'm really honestly I'm super excited to work with you. You have no idea.
I'm excited too.
And now the man behind the mask right here, Tommy. We've known each other for quite a few years now, right?
Yeah.
Tommy, obviously, he's been, following my work and vice versa. He's got his band stuff, and I, pay attention to that. But listen, if you guys don't know who Tommy is, man, Tommy, let him know what you've done. It's just a fucking sick roster you've got.
Well, I'm a bit bipolar, I guess is the best way of putting it. I'm Tom and I'm Tommy. I direct under Tom. I perform under Tommy. The Facebook's under Tommy. So I don't know. Just kind of the strange show business thing. But yeah, real fast. Yeah, I grew up in Culver City, played on the back lots of MGM as a kid. My dad was a USC film student, so it's kind of I was in my blood very early on. Yeah. Beatles hit, went into rock and roll in the 60s, opened for the Doors, Iron Butterfly, all the bands at that time. So that was going to be, my life. And then went off into the wonderful world of mime, studied in Paris with Marcel because I wanted to be a more visual lead singer. And when I was over there, I just got really back into film again from, what my dad had influenced me and the movies I made on the back lot of MGM as a kid. So that took me right back into there. And now 42 films later, the only thing I'm really known for is Friday the 13th, Jason Lives. But yeah. I'm very proud of that. And, and got a new one in the works that hopefully the lawsuit will end soon. And, I can actually make this sucker.
Yeah. Well, eventually we want to talk about that with you if you're willing to talk about that script or whatnot, because, not only, not only are we friends and I'm a fan of yours, but like, just, from the ideas that I've actually heard of already, it just sounds like amazing. And there's just probably so much meat there to talk about, obviously without spoiling anything, but
yeah, it's tough, because there's so many fan-based films now, and everybody, they're cranking them out. There must be 20 that I, so far have kind of kept track of.
Well, you're part of
it's
one
really
called
easy
Vengeance,
for
yeah?
ideas. They can get out there and get this thing done, and on the internet, long before I can get this thing made, just because I'm, going to have to deal with the studio system on mine.
Yeah. Well, you're part of one now called Vengeance, yeah?
Yeah, those guys reached out to me and said, we want to pick up your idea of Jason's father and kind of do a sequel to yours. And I said, hey, dudes, go for it,
Yeah.
And they said, we'd love you to do a cameo in it and actually, perform with CJ Graham, who's going to be Jason's father in the
Sure,
thing.
yeah.
So we do that. And then I'm kind of adding a little bit of, say so here and there on certain things in the cut. Not a whole lot because it's really their baby. But, if I see something and I go, it might be cooler if you do this or this. So, I'm so proud of these guys because, out of nowhere, they're pulling this thing together. And,
it looks sick. It looks real sick.
It's got some cool stuff in it, I got to say. I'm really, really fucking impressed.
Well, that's the whole thing about like the Friday 13th franchise. It's never going to die, obviously, because, you got fans that are, like taking swings at the fence, regardless of whatever happens with the property itself. And, it's really sad when, like something that beloved, and cherished becomes something like, I don't know, like a feud between, Jerry Only and Danzig of the Misfits or something. It's
Hatfields and McCoys, Yeah. Everybody was on the same team at one point, and then of course I think once the 25 years went up, for Victor, it was like, the author is supposed to, get the rights again, and then Paramount lost the thing and it went to Warner Brothers New Line. So we could get into that another time. There's just so much.
Yeah, for sure. So like once again, guys, welcome, to the show. Welcome the team. I hope you guys enjoy what we bring you. And, just want to thank you all for your love and support when it comes to the show. It's just, continuously getting bigger and bigger. I'm getting a lot of great, word of mouth when it comes to like, people's excitement every week and all that stuff. And it really is a dream for me to, somebody who was inspired, as I said before, like guys like Howard Stern when I was growing up. That's why I wanted to get into radio and do this type of stuff, is because, guys like him, and then literary, on the literary side, like guys like Stephen King and, Tommy, on one side, and Mick Garrison, guys like that. I mean, just kind of being able to meld these things together. Cause honestly, like, this, like Mick Garris is one of the best interviewers I've ever seen in my entire life. You know what I mean? He's such a great inspiration for me as far as, talking and interacting with people and asking the right questions and making them feel, a certain way without, like constantly kissing their ass. You know what I mean? It's
Mick and I, we've been pals for almost 40 years, literally. It's incredible. We ran into each other.
I saw that Midsommar Scream. Yeah.
So, it's like, there's just kind of almost like brotherhood, that we have.
Yeah.
But I'm in awe how great he is with, the whole thing of getting the best out of people and making them comfortable and stuff. He's got that down,
So the topic tonight, we're getting back into topics. I know, we were stepping into some interview territory there for a while. I wouldn't necessarily call it interview territory. It was more like, topical, and this is obviously going to be the same. But the one thing I really wanted to talk about or get a chance to talk about, especially with Tom being part of, of our crew and everything, and having the success of Alice Cooper's Man Behind the Mask with part 6, it inspired me to really talk about horror soundtracks. Because, I don't want to get too much into it because this is actually one of Tommy's picks, but when it comes to soundtracks, there's certain things that work so well that they stand the test of time. And it's not just because of that particular score or that particular song. It's simply because it matches that particular film so well. Like for example, if we didn't have, like maybe John Carpenter's score during 1978's Halloween, I don't think it would be the same film. You know what I mean? Or Psycho, or whatever. So like soundtracks when it comes to horror are very extremely important, or just like any film, honestly. So we just wanted to go through a list of, some of our favorites and, you know, why we love them so much and why they, you know, are held so close to our hearts. So, actually, you know what, Tom, I'll start with you, man. Like, what's the first on your list as far as great soundtrack?
Well, you know, it's hard asking a director that, because so much of the time, you know, you're putting something together, and I always look at soundtracks as like the soul of the thing. You know, you put all the pieces together, and it's like, all right, what's the soul? What's the thing that's going to take us through this and kind of have a life of its own, but also infuse the visual. And you look at something which to me is the granddaddy of them all, Jaws. I mean, what John Williams did, that was, I don't know, what, a third of the movie? I mean, I'm not to say anything against Steven's work, which was sensational, but you know, all you had to do was dun dun, and it's like Jaws. I mean, 2 notes, bang, you got it. And, and it still works to this day. Anytime you see that movie, the '70s just turned out so much great shit. It was just amazing. Yeah. And you know,
and a lot of it was due in part to John Williams, which is wild. You know what I mean? Probably like a good 60% is gone.
Yeah, Raiders. I mean, you go on and on. Close Encounters, all Steven stuff, as well as, you know, the other scores.
Or Star Wars and
But just in kind of iconic pure horror. I mentioned this to you earlier, but Tubular Bells with The Exorcist, which still is my top movie of all time, just because I was fortunate to watch audiences run up those aisles and throw up and see an ambulance out front and see Friedkin and Bldg out front passing out coffee, going, this is fucking great, you know. But that Tubular Bells, then, you know, we get Suspiria, very, very similar vibe, you know. And then, of course, you know, John's thing for Halloween. And if you listen to these back to back, you go, all right, we're all kind of in that same club here. And each one is different, but very much in that same, you know, pulsing, you know, fingernails on, you know, up down the chalkboard kind of thing. Your spine just getting cold back there, because it's just such a cool sound.
Yeah, it's very cool. God, I mean, you know, obviously Tubular Bells is so effective, you know, because it does, you know, like give you that feeling of, you know, chills going down your spine, you know, like not just the visuals alone, but was it really part of The Exorcist though, is the question, you know, like, I mean, it was obviously like included, like, you know, was it the final act for the most part?
Well, actually, it was only in that one. It actually only added a real sense of ominous and stuff in that one sequence where she's walking home from the movie set, and she's going down that kind of classic Halloween kind of street, the autumn and the leaves.
That's right. Yeah.
It just started to say there's something coming, you know. Now, a lot of people, I don't think, know this, that originally, you know, Friedkin had a score, which was the Amityville score that actually was used later than Amityville, but he just didn't dig the whole idea of having, you know, this movie scored. So he grabbed from bits and pieces of classical music and you know, soundscape stuff and things. So that whole thing was really kind of, you know, pieced together, Frankenstein together as a soundtrack. So it's not like obviously Jaws by any means, you know, or Halloween, or even you know, the repetitiveness of Suspiria, where it just bombast, you know. As soon as that starts up, it just like throws you into that nightmare. You know, obviously with Exorcist, it was a little more, you know, pieces of this bigger piece, but that music is so iconic now to that movie.
Yeah, for sure. 100%, man. Brittany, what was one of your choices as far as soundtracks?
One of mine, you actually named it, was Psycho.
Okay.
I mean, it's just something that's really widely known, like Jaws. You know, I think one of my favorite things when it comes to suspense is the violin, and whenever they have the scratchy or the broken up violin parts, that gives me that like feeling.
So like this is an interesting thing, because we, you know, like a lot of people don't know this, obviously, because we've never talked about it before. But another reason why I loved having Brittany as part of our group is, like, she was raised Christian and she wasn't able to watch certain films, and then now with her new husband, she's actually like starting to learn more and more about horror, especially being, you know, an actor in horror herself. And I thought that was really cool because we don't want a bunch of fucking know-it-alls on here. You know what I mean? So if you're actually going to get like a trial by fire being on the show and you're just going to learn more as time goes on, I think that's awesome. So like,
it's a fresh perspective. That's what
it's a fresh perspective, and we need that 100%. Yeah. I mean, Tommy's like the grand poobah expert out of the, you know, three of us, obviously, but like, you know, I know a little bit of shit and you know your shit, and I think it works out. So like, what else is it about that particular score that does something for you? I mean, you know, like that score is obviously so timeless, you know, when it comes to, I mean, did you actually get a sense of like dread to the point where like, say you know, like obviously there's a lot of people that weren't able to take showers after that movie. I mean, how?
I didn't get that just, I think, because that's one of the more recent ones that I've watched. So, and since I've started doing the acting stuff, they don't affect me the same way as they used to, you know?
Yeah.
I see more of like, well, and I just think of it differently. Like, I'm like thinking of the shots and how they got that, and like, oh, wow, that would have been a fun scene to act out or something like that. So they kind of don't affect me the same way. The reason I like that one was just I felt like it just made that scene, you know, kind of like all the other ones.
I don't know if acting in any scenes with Hitchcock directing would be fun at all. Like, I think he pretty much tortured Janet Leigh. Like, even for that one shower scene, he was just like, you know, really trying to ramp up her dread to the point where she's just like screaming bloody murder. Kind of like how Kubrick, you know, like treated, you know, Shelley Duvall, sort of.
Shelley Duvall, yeah. Those stories are pretty legion.
Yeah, for sure. I've got one that I've been dying to talk about, and I just watched the movie again a couple days ago, and this, oh God, the soundtrack still holds up. But The Lost Boys. Soundtrack, man, unbelievable.
Great.
Yeah, I mean, even like the most 80s sounding stuff on there just still works so well. The saxophone with Tim Capello with the, you know, the chains and the fire and the, oh my God,
oiled up dude,
yeah. Oh, and Cry Little Sister is like, I mean, to me, honestly, that particular song would be up there with, say, John Carpenter's score for Halloween, or you know what I mean? Like it is just like part of the horror pantheon, and it'll never ever go away. And it's been, you know, remade like so many times. You know, I think the most recent was Marilyn Manson, which I think he did a bang up job on that.
Yeah, he did. And there's something about that choral, "I shall not kill," you know, that's just so great. You know, that's just so haunting.
Yeah,
it just adds that other layer to that song.
Yeah. It's just like everything works. Like, you know, even, you know, from the you know, the doo-woppy like old classic R&B stuff, you know, with the, you know, with Sam in the bathtub, you know, to, you know, the whole like sail into the night, you know, where they're like riding around on motorcycles, and it's so fucking 80s, but like, and in your face 80s too. It's intensely 80s, but like, you know, I mean, we're from that era. Number one, I knew that
people are strange.
Well, there's two certain things for me that, you know, like kind of stemmed from that movie. One, you know, I'm always trying to find well, not now, but I'm trying to find my own like wild packs to hang out with. And that was pretty much a good part of my life. And then you got the geeky comic book, you know, side of me, you know, like the Frog Brothers, you know, so that, I don't know. There's different parts of me in that movie that like are like me in so many ways. And I think like Schumacher just executed that perfectly. I know a lot of people don't know this, but I think initially it was supposed to be like a Peter Pan story. It was supposed to be a bunch of children, like a Goonies or something. And then Schumacher said, "This is total shit. Like, I don't."
Richard Donner that had it or something.
I think it was Donner that originally had it, and he ended up jumping off. Yeah. And then Schumacher was like, "They should be sexy," you know.
People are strange. Also, you know, is actually 65 that it was Echo and the Bunnymen.
Yeah, it was Echo and the Bunnymen. But the thing is, that movie definitely reinvigorated the Doors' entire, like, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
I think a lot of people probably went back to the Doors after that movie.
Yeah, I mean, you know, the thing like with Queen now. I mean, it's like I can't get away from Queen any place since the success of Bohemian Rhapsody. It just brought it all back around again, just like the Live Aid did when they did that.
Yeah, and honestly, like, you know, I was part of so many scenes, the punk scene, the metal scene, and all that stuff. And, you know, I think a lot of it was due in part to seeing the Lost Boys when I was young and just burning the shit out of that VHS, man. I mean, like, just killing that thing. And like, you know, I think that honestly was probably the only time where I'd watch a movie and go, yeah, man, I'd want to be a vampire. Fuck yeah, this is great. You know what I mean? And they weren't doing anything like... I mean, everything they were doing was very strange, like hanging off of, like, you know, bridge railings and, you know, like they did attack that one group or whatever. But even that was like, you know, yeah, I can get into that, especially if you don't like the other side. You know what I mean? It's probably a lot easier just to butcher them or whatnot. But, you know, that soundtrack to me is just like absolutely one of the tops. I don't think that's ever going to go away.
Was that 86? Is that 86?
Yes.
Because, you know, the interesting thing, talking with a lot of guys, and, you know, I know Joel. I actually worked with Joel on Woody Allen's Sleeper.
That's
he was a production costumer, or production designer, what I'm talking about. And then we kind of hooked up, and then I worked with them on Incredible Shrinking Woman, you know, in some of the costumes and stuff because of my whole crazy mind background. But the weird thing, man, and I say this all the time to people, is like the 80s, when we were in the 80s and making these things, we were going, shit, our stuff is never going to be as good as what went on in the 70s. You know, that was like the definitive thing, you know, all the good shit. And we were just trying to do whatever we could to be in somewhat cool fashion. And it's amazing how many people of each generation go back and say, no, the 80s is when you guys are really nailing it.
Yeah.
And it sure didn't feel like it at the time.
Like, I love Near Dark. Near Dark, Catherine Bigelow's Near Dark is like one of the greatest, not even vampire films, but films of all time. But I think
it's got to be rediscovered. That's got to.
Oh, for sure, yeah. But as far as like, and you know, like, you know, we could talk about Tangerine Dream all day. But but the thing about the Lost Boys, I think that's like the diner or the Breakfast Club of vampire movies in the 80s, 100%. You know what I mean? Like that's the linchpin of pop culture when it comes to, you know, the vampire in that particular decade.
Yeah, for sure.
There's nothing better than that, you know, as far as I see it. But
you know what else I'd love to talk about is the difference between the score where there's a melody and there's something that repeats that's, you know, haunting and, you know, keeps kind of a theme going, as opposed to just like assembled sound and things. I recently saw the new Suspiria, which obviously they had to reinvent that in some fashion because the other we all hold in such, you know, high plane. But they did come up with some stuff in there that I thought was really irritating and bombastic in and of its own. But there's been so many great movies and John Carpenter's synthesized scores, you know, The Thing, things like that just, you know, they really stick with you, but you can't walk out humming a melody. But it does have such a great, you know, overall emotional impact on what it is that you're seeing.
Sure, absolutely. Brittany, you got anything else as far as like picks for us?
Well, one that, like, okay, I have not seen this movie, but when I was doing my research, I was listening to a bunch of score, and one that I liked, probably because it's got more of like a gothic feel, is the Hellraiser.
Oh yeah. Yeah, Christopher Young. Yes.
Yeah.
I don't know, after reading about it and stuff, I definitely is on my next watch list. And the music just intrigued me a lot. That's kind of like my style anyways, the gothic sort of feels. But yeah.
Well, the thing that's interesting about Hellraiser is that, like, you know, you haven't seen it yet?
No, but I like.
God, I wish I could be there while you're watching that fucking movie. Like, seriously, like that is such a gift to see somebody that hasn't seen what we've seen. The thing with Hellraiser is a lot of people, like, you know, consider it obviously, you know, for Pinhead, and that was like the thing that kind of like stood out, the Cenobite part of it. But they really aren't the villain of that movie. And
That's what I read.
much into it, like, but it is technically a love story between three people, and you know, there's this underlying, you know, like it's a soap opera is what it is. It's very simple. It's a woman who is like, you know, trapped in a marriage, and you know, like she's, you know, like totally like in love with this fucking wild brother that's into like, you know, the supernatural and dark shit and you know, whatever. But it is the journey of a woman. That's the most important part of Hellraiser. I think it is the journey of Julia Cotton, and everything else is just kind of like circumstance.
Right.
I think even like, you know, Ashley Lawrence's character to a certain degree is kind of jammed in there. It really is about Julia and her journey and how she becomes the evil that she becomes. But you know, we'll just leave it at that. But the Christopher Young score is probably one of the most beautiful pieces I've ever heard. What do you think, Tommy, as far as the Hellraiser?
I love Chris Young's work. I have tried for years to try to work with him. There's a, you know, we temp score things all the time, you know, before, and then we hand off this to the composer and say, yeah, make me one like this. Yeah. And one of the temp scores I used over and over, I don't know how many people out there know about it, is Jennifer 8.
Yes.
Chris Young did.
Yeah, that was Uma Thurman, right?
And Andy Garcia.
Andy Garcia, that's right. Yeah.
And
that's a good one, man. It's underrated.
It was just such a. It just worked on so many levels, and so, you know, we were always, Charles Bornstein, who was my editor, we were always pulling from that and then sort of giving that to the composer and saying, get something in that vibe, you know, because it is stuff that always has been really interesting. And as I said, Big Lament has never had a chance to actually work with him on a score.
Yeah. What's the next one you got going on in your brain there, man? Let's
in terms of other scores?
Yeah.
You know, I would like to talk a little bit about what's going on now.
Fantastic. Yes, please.
Because, you know, it's like, I don't know how you felt about It Follows, but I was really impressed that they did such a great throwback to the John Carpenter's.
It's interesting you say that. We may have an interview coming up with Micah Monroe.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I haven't seen what he's done since then. Is that the one that's
he
Silver
just
Lake?
Damn, I can't remember the name of the movie right now. I'll have to look it up as we're talking, but he ended up doing one that's it looks very Coen Brothers-esque.
Yeah, I think that's Under Silver Lake.
Under the Silver Lake, that's right.
Under the Silver Lake, yeah. Which I haven't seen. Unfortunately, it kind of disappeared very quickly.
Yeah, it was like at festival for a minute, and then it just, it was very strange what happened to that. And I hope it resurfaces.
Yeah, but that he had a score in there that I thought was really cool, that worked absolutely perfect with the vibe of the film and a kind of a callback to the Carpenter kind of movie of the 70s and his work in the 80s. Which was really great. And then,
well, here's my question to you as far as that's concerned. I mean, you know, like, I'm a huge fan of Stranger Things, don't get me wrong, but do you think that homage, especially when it comes to, say, the work of a Carpenter or Tangerine Dream or whatever, do you think it's been used so much now that it just kind of feels regurgitated as opposed to?
You know, that's a huge problem in general that we have. I mean, like, Quentin's new movie comes out, you know, and he's got all this cool music in it. It's obviously a movie about Hollywood. He's got all these major stars, but what do you read in the trades the next day? Well, obviously it's not going to do as well as the franchise movies because it's original. And there's this fucking fear about coming up with something original, something unique, that you're not going to like grab the audience that wants something familiar, something they go, okay, if I'm going to lay down 10 to 27 bucks in some of the places now, you know, if you go to AMC and you see something in IMAX or in 3D, you know, it's 27 bucks. So it's like, you know, they want to already guarantee that you're going to have some sort of identification with it, where, you know, I prefer to go see the little independent things where people are taking chances and doing risks and that, you know, trying stuff out. So I'm much more of a fan that somebody comes up with a melody that stays with me, you know, like in the old days when, you know, these great composers, the Newmans and obviously the Leonard Bernstein and the huge composers who did these scores that just had great, Max Stein. I mean, it goes on and on. How many of these guys could put so much into these scores? But now it's basically synthesized, or it's for a big franchise that they'll spend the money for that. So I'm not as in love with that as I am just those simple, like what John did with Halloween. Finding something that's simple enough and saying, okay, I got a pencil and a piece of paper. I'm going to draw you something cool.
Well, I think that's true. It's like the difference between John, like basically like in terms of, like budget and stuff, like, you were talking about drawings. He's drawing a stick figure, not realizing he's making a masterpiece.
Yeah.
These people are trying to doctor this same thing. And it just kind of feels like, it's just kind of like plagiarism more than, like I know, like, homage is like everything, and to have somebody like show love to your work is it just, I don't know, it just seems like it's just happening way too much. Everything's synth now. Everything is synth. Stranger Things, this and this and this, it's all the same beat, and
the thing we had too, talking about Hitchcock, Bernard Herrmann, was Hitchcock. I mean, the scores that he did. So when in my generation, when we were starting to go to see these things, when he couldn't get him for Carrie, he still did a very, very Bernard Herrmann type score.
Yeah.
And that has been imitated. Brian De Palma was the king of, Hitchcock, done on steroids, and yet he wanted to still hold it down with that, Bernard Herrmann kind of score.
Yeah.
And there were so many imitations of that, which seems like that's gone away. But I wouldn't mind hearing a taste of that back in certain people's things again, because there was something that really was I always use this word haunting, because I love that when you walk away from a movie, it stays with you, it haunts you afterwards. And good scores can do that.
Sorry, Miss Blanton. We want to hear from you. What do you got?
Oh man, let's see. I'm just listening. I'm learning so much. Find it back.
I hope you're not listening to me.
There was one song, it was in Rosemary's Baby.
Uh-huh.
And it's just, I can't find my note where I wrote it down.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Are you familiar with what she's talking about?
Sorry.
I have no clue what it's called. Tommy, do you have any idea?
I know how it goes.
Okay.
I don't know what it's called, but that again was one of those haunting melodies. That was the theme from Rosemary's Baby.
Yeah.
I'm ashamed that I don't know who the composer is.
Shame.
Oh,
I know.
Because I don't
look it up as soon as we're off of this.
It's a Polish jazz pianist, and I don't. Krzysztof Komeda? Is that right? Does that sound right? Komeda.
Sure.
Yeah, we'll go along with that.
Yeah, we'll go with that. Sure.
But that's a perfect example of the soul of a movie was that theme.
Yeah.
I mean that really, you could hear a few notes of that and go, oh my God, yeah, Rosemary.
Yeah.
It really captured her.
Well, I mean, obviously, since we're talking about soundtracks, we got to bring up the Kingfish. I mean, like there's no better score than Halloween. I mean, look, my fucking 70-year-old grandmother knows that score. Everybody knows that score. And even like the straightest non-horror people, if I play that, those particular keys on the piano, you're going to know what that score is. And I mean, not only just from a standpoint of how effective it is for that film and, how it like, kind of, guides, that story along, but, just the fact that it was just so universal.
Yeah.
Just these simple, I mean, it's almost like the Beatles in a way, like the way John Carpenter talks about his work. Because the Beatles kind of go, well, I was, coming up with an idea with John, and we kind of hit these keys, and came a song, and like they're talking about like fucking Penny Lane or some shit. You know what I mean? They just they don't care. They don't like. It's not like a masterpiece to John. John was just like, you know what? I love making music. It's like, it's, you know, it was fun for, you know, and it was effective for the time, but, you know, like you guys are, you know, treating this thing as a fucking, you know, work of art on a wall, where, you know, to John, it's like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, because I've spoken to him and he said that to me. So, you know, but the thing is, like, you know, like I was saying, you know, when it comes to its, you know, universality, like everybody knows Halloween, and
well, Nightmare on Elm Street too. I was watching that again the other day.
yeah,
That has a great haunting score too. That you can always tell if you go to the Halloween haunts, those different things. You know what you hear, you know, is exactly what everybody still relates to. And even though this is an audience today, you know, we're listening to Psycho, we're listening a lot to Halloween, we're listening to Tubular Bells. You know, all that stuff is still there. You know, still happening, which, you know,
right. And we can
classic.
get into, like, you know, Manfredini and, you know,
oh yeah, Harry, of course,
yeah. But the thing is, though, you know, you wanted to talk about new stuff, and, you know, like, I wouldn't necessarily call them like soundtracks, but they were just so brilliant in their architecture. Like, say, you know, the ambiance noise and things that they used for like A Quiet Place, or you know what I mean, or the score that was created for something like Don't Breathe, where they literally used you know, they used, like, you know, parts of the house to create, you know, different tones and sounds, you know what I mean? So you actually feel you know, that dread, that sense of dread of being locked in with this maniac, this blind maniac.
Well, Quiet Place is a great example of a score that was about the silence.
Oh, it should have won, like,
you know,
every Academy Award.
It's the same thing, the score for The Birds. You know, it's like, yeah, well, there was no fucking score. I mean, you know, it was the bird sounds, and that was pretty much it.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, Bernard Herrmann didn't know what to do. But that was, you know, Hitchcock after Psycho and things, he wanted to try to make it more realistic, you know, without having to boost the stuff, you know, with music. But it's, you know, it still feels like there was a score there. You know, the musicality of his images and stuff. There's a huge thing about that too, and how you plan a film out, as he did very meticulously. So all the cuts, everything has a kind of a rhythm to it. And, you know, the music can either help that or distract from it, depending on how good the composer is.
Well, since since we're here, and, you know, you're here and you're part of the team, like, let's talk about it, because I know a little bit of how it came to be. But, you know, it is the birthday of Friday the 13th, Part 6. By the way, happy anniversary, man.
Thank you.
I already showed my love for that quite a few days ago. But say Alice Cooper's Behind the Mask, was that something that you were familiar with before, or was that something that he actually wrote for the soundtrack itself? I don't recall if I
Alice was kind of in a slump area, as all bands go through, a period where you have all these hits and then it kind of flattened out a bit. Mm-hmm. And at the same time we were making the movie, you know, I was trying to find, you know, rock songs and stuff to play through a lot of that stuff, because obviously with my rock and roll roots, as much as I can put the songs in that we can afford, because it gets down to that all the time. And so we wanted to, you know, use some of Alice's songs. Frank Mancuso Jr. Had reached out, I guess, or maybe they reached out to him, Alice's record company, and said they'd love to do something. And Alice would write a song for this thing. So actually we got one version of it, which I thought was cool, because it was much more kind of a heavy rocker type thing.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I guess all the powers to be decided that they wanted to have more of an 80s vibe with the synth and you know, that sound with it. So they went back and redid it. And I went, okay, that's cool, that works too. You know, my big upset was I really wanted to do the music video, but they already had somebody, the record company, that was tied in to do it. But Alice, he wrote that song. He gave us Teenage Frankenstein and Hard Rock Summer. So it was you know, it was just great to have that there. And Harry's music, I asked him to try to do what he's done before, but go a little more gothic with it.
Yeah.
Which, you know, this has always been his favorite of the Friday scores, because it has a much more, you know, kind of classic gothic horror vibe to it, which is my whole objective with the movie.
Well, there's something I always wanted to ask you too, and I don't want it to become an interview because we're all family here, but, like, you know, since we're talking about Part 6, I mean, like, you know, what was that room like when you walked in there telling them you wanted to break the fourth wall of that franchise? Did they think you're out of your fucking mind or what? Like,
you know, yeah, and I don't know why, but they let me do what I wanted to do. Basically, the marching order just was, we screwed up on part 5. We shouldn't have made it not be Jason. The fans are pissed off. We normally wait 2 years before we put out the next Friday. We need to get this out within a year. So bring back Jason. I don't care how you do it. Get Jason back in. And that was pretty much all I needed to do was that. And everything else was, I went off, you know, and wrote the treatment. And the treatment, which is in the back of my book, Strange Idea of Entertainment.
Right.
If people read that, they can literally see, you know, the movie there, and they just approved that. And then when I went to script, I said, is this all this comedy okay with you? And he goes, yeah, just don't make fun of Jason. And I wanted him to be an unstoppable monster, you know, a new monster for the 80s. And, you know, they let me, you know, have that creative license, which is, you know, incredible blessing.
I'm going to go out on a limb just from the actual conceptual ideas that came from Deadpool, you know, like the first one with Ryan Reynolds. Obviously, he's, you know, part of the sequel too, but I'm just saying, when they were writing that script for Deadpool, there had to be somebody that was a fan of part 6, because there's so many different aspects of that particular script that are very similar, with the comedy, the fourth wall breaking, the violence, obviously, but also, you know, the dramatic aspect of it, the confrontational aspect of it, which, you know, which is Tommy and Jason, which is like, hang on a second, I'm going to show this to you, man. I've had this for years, bro. Where is it? Right here. Oh, it's fucking.
See what you're doing back
there. Hang on a second. I had this for years. Kept it like everywhere I moved.
Oh wow, I love that.
Yeah. That's like, and honestly, like, you know, you just capped off like one of the like greatest confrontations in horror history. I mean, you know, like, you know, for me personally, like, you know, I think of Michael and Laurie Strode, and, you know, but there's not a lot of final boys, and, you know, like you made one for the ages, dude, with
well, just like this show, Brittany, we need a Brittany because we need to have the girl. It's very important. And Tommy would have not conquered Jason if she didn't go in there, you know, and put that propeller into his
absolutely 100%. I
pull him out of there, you know. So it to me, it always gets down to the woman, you know, one way or the other. And his whole, you know, the whole kind of story of having her jump in there and help him accomplish this crazy mission of his was, you know, key to the story.
Well, that's an interesting thing too, because, like, you know, like, it's the same thing with Evil Dead 2 also. If she didn't fucking, you know, like, if she didn't recite, you know, his dumb ass wouldn't know how to do that shit. So she was the one that, recited from the Necronomicon and saved the day before she got stabbed in the back with a Kandarian dagger. But still, like, she's the hero of that movie. He's just a joke.
What happened? Yeah, but it's sort of going back to the old rules, you know, of setting up some sort of you know, reason why the villain is the way they are and who they're going after. And the same thing, Tommy just, and this is another borrow from the Universal horror movies, is there's a thing in the beginning of Bride of Frankenstein where Fritz, you know, he says, I just want to go in there, I just want to see his blackened bones and I can sleep at night. And, you know, I sort of took that whole idea and it's like, Tommy, you know, what are you trying to do here? I just want to make sure he's down there and dead, and then he's going to burn his body and just make sure it's over. And of course he fucks up, you know, and he brings it back stronger than ever. But, you know, there's just, you know, kind of those nods to that kind of, you know, movie storytelling, you know, horror movie storytelling.
Oh, it's so great, man. It's like my favorite. I'm biased, man. So we'll be back here next week with something new to talk about. Brittany, Tommy, see you next week, man. We'll
okay.
See you later. Please like and subscribe. And and you know, thank you so much for the love and support when it comes to Dungeon Deadly Delights. We have so much more in store for you. It's only just begun, and we have such sights to show you. All right, guys, take care. We'll see you.
See you in the dungeon.
Bye. See ya.